Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1236B, and today's date is March 23rd, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Narrative Has Been Set for the Collapse and the Next Event. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, during the hearing with James Comey and Mike Rogers, we saw that Schiff asked Comey a question about wiretapping, and does he have any information about wiretapping? And it looked like Comey at that point in time, it looked like he was reading from a script. And when someone does that, it looks like they were fed the question ahead of time so they could prepare for that question. And it looks like he was reading a canned response saying that he had absolutely no evidence whatsoever. And we know that this entire hearing was a complete show, so that clip could be sent around the world over and over and over to convince people that there was no evidence. But we come to find that there was evidence that Trump was being surveilled, because we know that Flynn was under surveillance. So if Flynn was under surveillance, well, you would think that they were also surveilling other individuals, and that's what it turned out to be. That's exactly what they were doing. But of course now Schiff is out there, Pelosi's out there, and they're saying Nunes, he is on the side of Trump, and you can't believe anything he's saying, and they're out there just trying to cover up what is coming out right now. But there was a survey done about James Comey, about the U.S. voters. Do they approve or disapprove of the FBI director? And the poll found that nearly 70% of U.S. voters disapprove of the FBI director. And this poll was coming from the Harvard-Harris poll survey. It was released in full to the Hill newspaper. It surveyed about 2,092 registered voters, Democrat, Republican, and Independent, on an online poll from the 14th to the 16th of March. And it looks like that individuals right now who are looking at Comey are saying that we don't trust him. We don't approve of what he's doing. And we can see right now that from the testimony and from him not going after the leakers or doing anything or following up on crimes, we can see that the deep state is definitely controlling him. We see that Nunes is saying that the FBI is not cooperating with their investigation that's going on. They don't want the FBI to cooperate with them. They want to do an independent investigation into the Trump surveillance. And we can see right now from Nunes, he's saying that the NSA is being cooperative, but so far the FBI has not told us whether or not they're going to respond to our March 15th letter, which is now a couple of weeks old. Nunes also reported that as of now, he cannot rule out President Obama ordering the surveillance. And we see right now that the surveillance had nothing to do with Russia. It had nothing to do with that right now whatsoever. And evidence is growing right now where Obama, Clapper, Brennan, Rogers, well, they're under the spotlight at this point. And what we come to find out is that Obama's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, and his Central Intelligence Agency Director, John Brennan, well, they oversaw a secret supercomputer system known as the Hammer. And this is coming from NSA, CIA contractor, whistleblower Dennis Montgomery. Clapper and Brennan were using the supercomputer system to conduct illegal and unconstitutional government data harvesting and wiretapping. The Hammer was installed on federal property in Fort Washington, Maryland, at a complex which some speculate is a secret CIA NSA operation operating at a U.S. naval facility. Now, President Trump's allegations that Obama's administration was wiretapping him is not only supported by Montgomery's whistleblower revelation about Brennan's and Clapper's computer system, the Hammer, but also by statements made this week by William Binney, a former NSA technical director of the World Geopolitical and Military Analysis Reporting Group, by former CIA and State Department official Larry Johnson, and by Montgomery's attorney Larry Klayman. Montgomery also contends that the government can plant files such as child pornography or state secrets on targets' computers, setting up the owner of that device for blackmail or frame prosecution. Now, it sounds unbelievable. It sounds like, how can they do this? But we know from Wikileaks with Vault 7 and now Nightskies 1.2, it shows they have the ability to control systems. Now, we've been saying this for quite a while, where they have control of electronic devices. This is embedded. It is taken from the factory. They put in their firmware. It has nothing to do with the software, and they can take control of these devices at any time. And here is the press release from Wikileaks. Documentation for several CIA projects that infect Apple Mac computer firmware, meaning the infection persists even if the operating system is reinstalled, developed by the CIA's Embedded Development Branch. Among others, these documents reveal the Sonic Screwdriver Project, which, as explained by the CIA, is a mechanism for executing code on peripheral devices while a Mac laptop or desktop is booting, allowing an attacker to boot into attack software, for example, from a USB stick, even when a firmware password is enabled. The CIA's Sonic Screwdriver infector is stored on the modified firmware of an Apple Thunderbolt to Ethernet adapter. And we can see as more and more of this information comes out, they have the ability to use surveillance, they have the ability to blackmail individuals, they have the ability to do quite a bit. Now, we know from Robert David Steele, he's been talking a lot about how come this warm weather, Obama, Soros, and many others, they're going to be pushing protests. He's saying it's going to start May 1st. And we've been looking at what Soros has been doing. Well, he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about, hate crimes from Trump, mustering the troops together. We know that he's been spending millions and millions of dollars to put together organizations to handle the protests. And then we come to find out that the George Soros-funded group Fight for the Future is offering anti-Trump activists up to $15,000 per month to quit their jobs and do activism full-time using every connection, skill, tool, and trick at your disposal until you win. And the website says, terrified about Trump? Quit your job, start an A-team. We will fund it. We will give you $15,000 a month. Now, they're still working out the details, but if you got a strong 2 to 3 person A-team and a target, we give you $15,000 right now for the first month, just to see what you can do. So what he's doing right now is he's putting together these A-teams, and it looks like he's taking it from the TV show, The A-Team, putting it together and having these small little groups go out there and rile things up, get the protesters going. Now, it looks like there are going to be protests, and most likely they're going to be very peaceful, but then when you add in these A-teams, these agent provocateurs, guess what happens? Well, things get out of hand. This is exactly what they're striving for. This is what they want. This is why he was taking his funds, his millions and millions of dollars, and using it to create the army that they're going to use during the next couple of months. And this is something that we need to watch. We're tracking it, we're following it, and we're seeing how this whole thing unfolds. Now, about a year ago or so, we know that there was a cyber attack on Sony, and the corporate media was all out there saying it was North Korea, North Korea, North Korea. They did it. And we looked into it, and we uncovered that, no, it was a disgruntled employee, but they kept on going with North Korea. And of course, back then, like I've said every single time since, they are not able to track down a state actor that quickly. It's completely impossible. And as soon as it happened, a couple days later, they said they knew exactly who it was. There were breadcrumbs. There was evidence. They knew it was North Korea. Today, we come to find out that Vault 7 tells us that they have the ability to compile code and stick in evidence that it's coming from a certain country. And you have to remember, the state actor, they bounce it off server to server to server, and it's very difficult to track down. Even if they're telling you it's coming from North Korea, why would they do it from their own country? First of all, North Korea, what do they have, like one block of IPs? So that'd be the most ridiculous thing to do in the first place. But state actors don't work that way. They know to bounce it off many different servers. Even the low-level hacker knows to bounce it off many different servers. But we can see what they're doing is they've been shaping a narrative. Now, they've been using nuclear weapons, they've been using missile launches to make us think that North Korea is evil, they're coming to get us, they're going to be cyber attacking our infrastructure, our banks. First of all, the infrastructure, it's not really connected to the internet. So for someone to really get in and do something, they would have to come physically to the infrastructure to do this. But they want you to believe they have the ability to do this. So it would have to be someone on site. And what we're seeing right now coming out of the Wall Street Journal, they reported that the federal prosecutors are building a potential case that would accuse North Korea of directing the theft of $81 million from Bangladesh's account at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York last year. Now, the charges, if filed, would target alleged Chinese middlemen who prosecutors believed helped North Korea orchestrate the theft. Now, they're taking China and North Korea and combining them. Remember what Tillerson and what they've been saying to China. Control North Korea, because their ultimate goal is China. And then from China, it is Russia. So the current cases being pursued may not include charges against North Korea officials, but would likely implicate North Korea. Now, if that linkage is true, that means a nation state is robbing banks. They have the ability to access, through means of cyber attacks, to get funds from the Federal Reserve. It's the Federal Reserve. Who really cares? But anyhow, what they're doing here is they are setting up the narrative for the next event. They're setting up what is going to happen in the future. Now, remember, the deep state plans, they don't always work out. Things always go wrong. And we know from Wikileaks, the Umbrage program, we know that they have the ability to frame third parties for hacker attacks. And this is exactly what has been done. Because they can't blame the entire economic collapse on Trump. Yes, they can blame the deterioration of the economy. They can blame why the economy is coming down. But what we're seeing right now is the economy slips further and further into this collapse scenario. They can't say, well, him being in office for these couple of months, he's the one who crashed it. He could start the crash, but they're going to have to bring in some other country. They're going to have to bring in some other foe. And that used to be Russia. It still might be Russia, but it looks like North Korea, that fits the mold right now, because they realized through doing a couple of tests with Trump gets overheated when you mention Iran or North Korea. And you can see from his tweets where he says, this is a bad guy, this is a bad nation. You can see that their little test of trying to push him in certain directions, it definitely works. So the deep state realizes and understands how to manipulate the situation. And when the economy starts to come down, it looks like the scenario is still on to bring down the entire system by cyber attacking the financial institutions, because this will allow them at this point to say it was Trump who started it. They saw a weakened economy, a weakened country. North Korea stepped in, cyber attacked the system, and all of a sudden, the financial institutions, well, they are completely imploding. They're going to have to be shut down. The banks are going to have to go on holiday. People will not be able to get their funds. And it looks like we're going down this path. And before they do this, they have to shape a narrative. And this is what the corporate media is using. The CIA directs them. This is our next plan. Remember, their tactics, their plans, they might change. But the goal is always there, because things happen. Things change in the environment that they cannot control. So we can see already they're shaping this entire story at this point. We see out in Ukraine, U.S. European Command Head General Curtis Scaparrotti, as he was speaking to the Senate Armed Service Committee on Wednesday, that the United States needs to provide reinforcements to the Ukraine military, maybe lethal weapons. And we can see already with McCain, with Graham going out to Ukraine saying this is the offensive, we can see already they're making their plea to the Senate Arms Committee, the Senate Armed Service Committee, which McCain is a member of. And we see already they're pushing the idea of giving lethal weapons to the Ukrainian army, because they want this to be the year of the offensive. They want a full-blown war to start with Russia. They're making their move right now. We see UK tanks, they have arrived in Estonia, joining the NATO troops. And of course, they're having their military drills there. They have an armored convoy of about 130 units, including Challenger 2 tanks and self-propelled guns. And we can see that NATO, the US, the UK, they're all unloading their equipment very close to Russia. Because in their minds, their goal is to get into war, is to push war. We see Tillerson right now is urging the Senate to ratify Montenegro's NATO membership. Now, remember, McCain was on the Senate floor, and he was saying anyone that objects to Montenegro joining NATO is working for Putin. And Rand Paul said, I object, and he walked out. And we can see right now that, again, all of this is to get strategic locations to surround Russia. And McCain right now is trying to do whatever he possibly can to get this done because they understand where this is going. This is being pushed for war. Now, we see out in Syria, U.S. forces in Syria have begun airdropping troops behind the Islamic State lines near the town of Al-Tapqa, near the Tapqa Dam. And the exact details of the airdrop, well, they're still emerging, but they include U.S. Marines, also Kurdish forces are there. And we can see right now, this is an invasion of Syria. Assad has never invited the United States into his country. The people of Syria have never given permission for the United States to be there. And we can see that we have troops around the Raqqa area. We see there's hundreds of U.S. Marines with howitzers in the area of North Raqqa. Of course, these are only advisors with howitzers. And we can see at this point that they are making their move to capture a certain portion of Syria. Because in the end, what they want to do is they want to split off Syria if they can't get Assad removed. We see out in Ukraine, a former Russian MP wanted by Moscow for fraud was shot dead in broad daylight. Now, Poroshenko was out there right away saying this is terrorism from Russia. Do you think he's trying to start something here? Most likely, he was gunned down by Ukrainian forces to create this false flag, to blame it on Russia, to get the war started. Because we already know they want to bring in lethal weapons. We know it's the year of the offensive, and it looks like this is a false flag. We see another false flag that was about to happen in Belgium. A French-Tunisian man has been arrested in Belgium City after trying to drive his car into a crowd of busy people at a shopping area. And we see right now the identity of this individual is a 39-year-old driver identified as Mohammed R., and he had weapons and things like that, and it looks like they're planning another false flag event. Now, out in London, we see the Islamic State. They have taken responsibility. Of course, it's coming from Rita Katz and from Site Intelligence, which we know this is part of Mossad, and we know they're the ones who create all these fancy videos with Islamic State. It's a propaganda outlet to scare everyone. And we can see with this false flag, there are individuals that have passed away, and we can see some were Americans, some were from other countries. And again, false flags don't mean it's completely fake. It means it was set up to push a certain agenda. Now, after yesterday's snafu, in which a London attacker was incorrectly named as the Islamic State hate preacher, who, however, turned out to be in prison at the time of the attack, the UK police said that the man they believed to be responsible for the terrorist attack is a person who lives in Westminster and has been formally identified as Khalid Massoud. Now, Massoud is 52, was born in Kent, and detectives believe he was most recently living in the West Midlands. Now, they knew about him. He was under surveillance. MI6 investigated him. So the question is, were they controlling him once again? And what's very interesting about this whole thing, we know that the entire city of London, they have these CCTV footage cameras all over the place, and they film pretty much everything. But in this one area where this occurred, this false flag happened, the CCTV cameras for Westminster were reported to have been taken offline as of September, apparently due to the cost of maintaining them. So this entire event happened in the area where there were no cameras. Now, that's very interesting. Now, the other interesting thing about this is that this fits into the pattern of a false flag where these individuals end up dying. Now, the person was running around with a knife, using a car, And we can see they were making a really big deal about this. So now it looks like we have to ban all knives and all cars because this was used to hurt and kill many individuals. And what we see here is that the date was March 22nd, 322. And this is an iconic date because it's the first anniversary of the false flag attack in Brussels. And 322 is the identifier of the Skull and Bones Secret Society. Is it just a coincidence that a massive terror drill was also being held on the River Thames a few days before this event? I mean, we always seem to have drills right before the main event. And all these dates and everything that was happening, it just seems too coincidental. We also had the news of the surveillance breaking about Trump at the same exact time. And we know there's a new Scottish referendum. We know that Article 50 is coming up in England. Do you think they're sending a message? Well, it does to me, and it looks like the deep state, they're still pushing their agenda. Remember, they're trying to hit their goal. They're trying to reach what they've always been trying to reach. Control of the population, morph everything into one, have a one world government, one currency, and control everything. They're still trying to reach this goal. And all these countries right now are fighting it. They all want to break away from the EU. They don't want to be part of a one world government. Their experiment has failed. The world is in so much debt. There are so many people out of work. Economies are failing. And people are realizing it now. And they understand that they need to gain control. They have to speed things up. They have to take control of everything that's going on before they lose control. And this is why they're going to push even harder as we move throughout this year. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.